In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up Retrieval-Augmented Generation workflow using Langflow. So we're going to keep this video very simple and very practical so we understand what RAG actually means. So if you need more breakdown of what RAG means and how to make use of RAG in Langflow, like more complex video, I have a video which I'll leave in the description and also in the show notes for people that are interested in getting started with Langflow. So for this particular video, I'll be using an HRO policy document, right? Just a kind of file a company has lying around. So by the end of this video, we should be able to upload the file to our vector store, then serve it to our LLM, then query it in plain English. So before that, let me just show you a diagram I came up with just to explain what RAG is, right? So now think about a scenario like this. Let's say, for example, in a chat app, and you query your LLM in the sense of, okay, you write it plain English and say, okay, what is in my company docs? Then this question is being passed down to the LLM, right? And your LLM definitely is going to reply and say, I don't know, because I have no context. I have no idea about your company docs. Can you point me to the docs? What are you referring to? So now, this is where RAG comes in, right? So in the place where you have your knowledge base or your docs, it could be a PDF, it could be a doc file, it could be a TXT file, right? Or it could even be a link. Then there's a retriever. Your retriever basically send that information down to the LLM, right? So at this point, you already have a knowledge base that contains the information of your docs, and your LLM at this point should be able to give you the answer. Remember, we asked our LLM, what is in my company docs? So once we have a knowledge base, right, and there's a retriever, this is how our workflow is going to look like right now. If you say, what is in the company docs, or what is in my company docs, we ask our LLM, right? First off, our LLM goes to the retriever to try to retrieve the information. In our case, this could be a vector store, right, that contains chunks of our file or the information that it's going to retrieve. So once it retrieves that information, it sends it back. It sends it back to the LLM, right? Then the LLM gives you the answer, which is, here's the answer based on your documents. All right. So this diagram just gives you a basic understanding of what this diagram gives you a basic understanding of what RAG is. So RAG basically, where we have the retriever, where we have our knowledge base, and our LLM knows the context, right? Or it knows the context of what we are asking. Because normally your LLM is not going to know what is in your company docs, it's not going to know some internal docs or some stuff that are not even the LLM wasn't trained on, right? So this is what we are going to be looking at. So this diagram look very basic. Right? But I'll show you how you can create such workflow in Langflow. So let's get to it. Okay, so currently we just have the Langflow desktop app open here. So you can basically download this from the Langflow site, right? So if you're on MacBook or you're on Windows or your Windows PC, right, you can definitely download the desktop app. So we're just going to be using this for this particular video. And we'll set it up and we basically want to create a new flow, right? A new RAG flow. So once we do this, you get to see the templates that are already existing. But for our case, we're just going to start with blank flow. So we start from scratch at least and try to understand each of the flow, right, before we get there. So we just have a blank flow right now. And it's also worth mentioning that when you always want to build a RAG application or you always want to build RAG, it involves two flows, right? The load flow and the retrieval flow. So what does that mean? It basically means that you need to create two different flows, right? A flow that is just going to load your file, and you have a different flow that retrieves that text or the chunks of text from your file or from your vector store, right? Then serves it to the LLM. Then your LLM basically returns the response to your user. For example, if it's a chatbot. So it's worth mentioning. So let's quickly just go back to Langflow again. So we currently have Langflow open up here. So let's just start from the scratch. So for our case right now, we are going to create the load flow first, right? And to create the load flow, we need some components. So first of all, we need the file components, right? We need the file components, and the file components is just used to load our content, right? For more files. The file component is used to load our content. In our case, it's going to be a PDF or it's going to be a doc, right? So we have our load flow. We're just going to keep this here. And we have our file. The next component we need to also bring out here for our load flow, right? It's just going to be a split text component. Now, the split text component is just used to split the text into chunks based on our specified criteria, right? So we need this split text, and we are not going to add our split text to our inputs, right? And we need our vector store, right? So at this point, so once you pass your data to your file, and from your file, then our split text basically split that text, right? We should be able to save our text somewhere, right? In our case, we need a vector store right now. Now you could basically use AstraDB, but for just this video, we're going to be using ChromaDB, which is also available on Langflow, right? So if you say you want to go with AstraDB, you could just bring in the components over here, pass in your token, then you could use it, right? But for our case, we are just going to be using ChromaDB for this particular video. So once we have our ChromaDB here, right, we pretty much have the file, the splits, then our ChromaDB, which is going to hold our split text, right? Now, so let's see if we can actually zoom out. Okay, so next we need our embedding model. So since we're going to be using OpenAI, right, we could basically bring our embedding model and just call this OpenAI. We could leave this model name. Then we need an API key, right? Definitely, you need an API key to be able to use this embedding model. I have an API key on the global variable. I have an API key already set up here, right? So I'm just going to add that for this. Then we have to make sure the connection is properly done. So now we have the file, we have the split text. Now the split text should connect to our ingest data, right? In our ChromaDB, which is our vector store. Then our embeddings is definitely going to be the one we already set up the component over here, right? So we just have those 4 components, which is going to represent our load data. So the next and the final one we need to complete this particular flow is the output. So we're just going to bring in an output and say, okay, this is just going to be chat output. This is going to be our chat output. Amazing. Okay, so going through what we just did again, we're trying to set up the load flow, right, for our RAG application. So the file which takes in our contents or takes in our documents, split text, pass it to our ChromaDB, which is our vector store. Then our embedding model takes this. Then we have our search results, right, which has been sent out to the output. So we are done with one part. So let's quickly just go up here and start setting up the retrieval part. So the retrieval part basically comprised of different components too, right? So first off, you always need the chat input, which basically represents we starting out the component, right? So we need the chat input. Then after the chat input, remember we have our vector store, we need ChromaDB at this point, and our chat input should be connected to our search query, right? Then since we have our ChromaDB, we also have to make use of the same embedding model as we're using in our load flow. So let's bring our embedding model, OpenAI, then pass in our API key, then pass it to our embedding model. Cool. So for this, we also need a parser, right? So we just search for the parser component that's available here. So for the parser component, it just extracts our text, right, using a template. We're just gonna go with just these basics, right? And we are going to go with these basics. And let's just quickly set this up properly here. So our parser should be directly getting its next flow. So we have our parser. So we're going to pass our parser down to the data frame, right? And we can just change it to be our data frame, right? So our data frame and our parser, then we need another component right now. So the next component we need the prompt component. So we're just going to search for prompts. So it's going to bring in our prompt template, just basically creating our prompt template dynamic variables. All right. And okay, so once we have our prompt templates, right? Okay, so we have our parser. So the next thing we need a prompt template. We're just going to look for the component over here and just bring it into our workflow. So we are just going to open this up and I'm just going to paste in some text. So this basically takes in the context, says, given the context above, answer the question as best as possible, right? There's going to be a question variable and also a context variable. So let's check and see. So once we do that, we should be able to see we currently have the context and also the question variables all set up here. So first off, our context is definitely going to be the base text, right? Or the context is going to be the past text coming from our ChromaDB. Then our question is going to be our chat input, right? So let me just show you what we did here. So we just took our question from our chat, just make sure that works properly, and question down to our chat output, right? And at this point, we have the chat input, we have our vector store, we have our embedding model, we have our parser, we have our prompt templates, and we should be able to bring in our model at this point, right? So we're just going to bring in our language model. And this video, we're going to be using OpenAI as our provider. So we're just going to bring in our model provider. We're just going to bring in our language model. We're using OpenAI. Then for this model, we could just use maybe GPT-3 or basically could use for this video, we could basically use GPT-4 or anyone. So for this video, we could use GPT-4, right? We could use GPT-4 or any other kind of a model from OpenAI. So once we do that, we should pretty much be able to add our API key once we have that environmental variable, right? Now, we have our input, which is going to be passed down to our language model. So we're going to pass our prompts, right? Pass down to our input, and it has a receiving input. Then the last part of this particular retrieval part is just going to be our output. So our chat output is also going to take our language model in, right? Okay, so let's just go through this one more time before we even test this out and see how it works. So first off, we brought in our chat input, which is where we're going to be imputing, right? Okay, what's the document? What's the document? Hello, hi, like basic plain English, right? Then that input, right? Whatever we're imputing has to go through our ChromaDB, right? For our search query to check. Remember, the right diagram we use, right? The diagram where we see there has to be a retriever, there has to be a doc, add down to LLM, right? So when you ask the question, this is in our own context now, this is just going to be our chat input. We say what is the company docs, right? Then it's pass down to the LLM. The LLM basically just goes to retriever, gets the information, pass it down to us, shows the answer. That's basically what we are doing here, right, with this flow. So this is the retrieval flow. So the chat input to the ChromaDB, which is our vector store, which is our search query, takes in our search query, right? Then it passes that data. Then we have our prompt template, which takes in two variables, the context and the question variables. Then our language model, in our case, is just OpenAI, right? And we're using GPT-4, and we have our chat output. Okay, cool. So let's quickly just take a look at this again. So we have the load and the retrieval parts. So if you do our playground, now let's see if everything works properly. So first off, let's just do what is in my documents. Okay, so it says the text does not provide information about what is in the document. Now, remember, right, in our load part, we haven't loaded the file yet. So in our case, we quickly could just jump into it and say, okay, we can take out all these ones to be already needed. Okay, so we're just going to select a file, and we're quickly just going to select one I already have here, right? An HR policy file, and that's what we're going to be using. So select file, then you could also, okay. So once we have our file selected at this point, right? This is definitely not going to work because you can see we haven't connected our file to the split text. So for our file, we're just going to connect it to our inputs so that it takes in the input to the split text, right? Then pass it down to our ChromaDB, save it, ingest it to our ChromaDB. So our retriever at this point will be able to use our search query and check and also retrieve that information from our doc. So we're just going to try we're just going to try playing this component and see if it works. So first off, you can see it's moving across every component, and I think it says, just to show you again, right? Go through this one, flow successfully view. So at this point, we should be able to query our documents, right? And ask our LLM. So we're just going to create a new section. Let's do this previous section here and say, okay, what is in my document? Okay. Okay, so now we have a context, right? Our LLM understand that, okay, there's a document, right, which we are referring to. It says the document contains the HR policy of a company. This policy includes working hours, leave policies, remote work policies, code of conduct, and performance review, right? It means before now, our LLM didn't have the context or didn't even know what we're talking about when we said what is in my document. But now our LLM can go and retrieve our information from the vector store, right, based on the search query. Now we can query our chat system or our chatbot right now and say, okay, we can ask questions like how many days of annual leave do employees get? This is all in the docs, right? It says full-time employees are entitled to 20 days of paid annual leaves per calendar year. So we can even actually say, okay, what is the official working hour? What is the official working hour? Right? Just querying the database, and we have our information. It says the official working hour are from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. So now this basically has the context of what we are trying to query at this point. So I'm just going to open up the docs so we can see what is even inside the docs and how the LLM knows the context at this point. So this is what our docs look like, right? So it's just a dummy company HR policies, which contains working hours, leave policies, remote work policies, code of conduct. And last question we just asked it was, okay, what is the official working hour? It says it's from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Right? So now at this point, our LLM is aware of our company policy, all right? And it definitely can give you answer based on your queries or based on the particular document. And that's just the basic idea around retrieval-augmented generation, right? And how you can actually create this kind of flow in Langflow, right? Which is very, very easy with just dragging and dropping your components. You just have a full RAG flow, which you can even use in your own personal application or in an internal app or in your own workflow, right? Based on your documents. Yeah, so I hope this video has been able to really explain how RAG works behind the scene and how you can build your own RAG system, right? Using Langflow. Thanks for watching to this point and see you in the next one.